Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Reconvening. Hope everyone's got full bellies now. Mine will stop rumbling for you. So picking up where we left off, we have a recommendation on the table. But can you reread that, please, Robin, for us?
Oh, this is the
Theatrical lighting, yeah.
Carried over is carried over to years one. Funding's used in years 1 to 3.
Yes, split across years 1, 2, and 3 as per the reports and the capital projects spreadsheet. Yes.
And there was a question from Mayor and Councillor Cretan here with regards to the new control panel. The answer is the new control panel is required to do all lighting. So it will do both the existing lighting and the new LED lighting. The existing control panel can't do all of the new lighting. You need to replace the control panel to do existing and new, and then you begin to replace the lighting fixtures. Speaking with the team, they did believe that it could be pushed out further in the LTP. So you would need to start with a new control panel first, and then the actual rollout of the new LED could extend beyond year 3 in the LTP, potentially year 5. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So the first 2 pieces that would need to be in year 1 would be the control panel and the house lighting interface. So that $37,000 and $6,000, those 2 pieces would need to be at the start of the project, and then the rest of it would come later on.
That is loan funded, those parts. So we're talking 70,000 a year. So
as a capex.
Yeah. So the cost, I'm just thinking about what's the real net benefit of deferring another year.
It's not significant in terms of the rates number.
Yeah.
Thank you very much and the team for getting that information together for us. Councillor Cretney and Mayor Ron, does that answer the questions for you that you had?
Thank you.
So we do already have a motion on the table. So I will put that motion to the vote. And that is to, as discussed, for the theatrical lighting improvements to be split across years 1, 2, and 3. By show of hands, those in favour, please. 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? And the 3 against. So that motion is carried.
I know it's not long of an explanation, but I would have preferred it pushed out to 2, 3, 4. So
and then that's something that we can always pick up, Your Worship, in the actual full council discussions on the LTP. Is that correct?
If the chair would like, I could take an action to look at the profile of that spending as part of the LTP that we bring up to council on the 26th of June.
And I say that,
That would be great, thank you.
and through you, I say that because I'm looking at the total bill, which is 706,000 just into the event centre. And collectively, it's a sizable sum of money.
So that'd be really invaluable. Thank you. Look forward to receiving that. So that takes us to the end of the business cases. Information had been requested from the CE regarding staffing levels. It has already been previously noted that obviously staffing levels are actually a consequence of our levels of service. Are there any questions around the table from any members that they would have regarding staffing levels? There's no actual nothing. Information that you've sent it through. Are there any questions around the table? Councillor Crackney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of questions just relating to the accumulative effect of the rates that we're going to be going out with, and whether we should be asking our CE to look at our personnel levels closely. We've lost a communications person. Do we need to replace that communications person? Should we be looking at the IT? Do we need 2 IT people for 10,000 people? I think all of these things need to be looked at because, Jeff, you've alluded to this, operations is where we could get the biggest bang for buck. So this is where we get big bang for buck accumulatively. So my question is should we be requesting a full overview of personnel levels?
Your question is noted. Councillor Williams.
Not a question.
Is it in relation to the question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's understandable to hone in on the big ticket items, but in terms of operation, what you said before, Madam Chair, is absolutely right. The levels of service which we've discussed and debated and established some time ago. I mean, Councillor Crackney mentions IT. Well, we've already had discussions on that about the risk, about the necessity, with scams and with all different upgrades. We're very vulnerable with a single person. So we agreed, council agreed to support the investment in another IT person. So, I'd be reluctant to start at the front end and work backwards when we've established levels of service which determine the staffing levels required in order to meet that work program that council has demanded of the CE. I just think I completely understand the desire, but I just think it's put the process backwards when we've already started frontwards. My opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Crackney. Yes.
I reply. So these decisions were prior to any LTP decisions, is that correct? Before any numbers were put up to what our LTP figures would be looking like. So a whole overview of the whole of council has to be considered. Not taking into consideration that we've looked at something previously and decided, yes, that we do need to have this person. Now we need to be looking at those again. Do we need this person in light of our projected rates increase?
Well, sorry, Madam Chair, I get that, but we didn't say at the time. We agreed to an extra staff member for all the valid reasons at the time, but subject to any future rate increases. We didn't do that because that would be.
Okay.
In reply, we agreed to have part FTEs with our shared services, and if they cut them, it's the same principle, isn't it?
A question?
Yeah, I did signal it.
Yeah, that's why I know. Well, I was waiting until that one had been answered, so that's why I'm looking at you saying you have a question.
Yeah.
Stuart?
Yeah. Well, it's as Dale has said, it's a comment on a question. I worry about predetermined bias and people's inflexibility and ability to change their mind. If we are saying that all the discussions and all the workshops we had before we heard submissions stand supreme, we've done the work and therefore we can't change, then I would worry about that. I would also point out that we have now a clearer picture of what all of those previous decisions are presenting us with. We are reviewing the long-term plan. It is open, I would suggest, to any member of the hearings committee to challenge previous decisions, and it would be legitimate to do that. Whether or not the whole of the committee agrees, hey, that's to be done.
And that is, you're quite correct. That is part of having deliberations, is to enable questions to be asked. We do need to bear in mind that the LTP, that draft consultation document and that information that has been brought to us has been informed by decisions that have been made. Councillors were all part of that, but as you've said, we are now deliberating around the LTP, and it's good to have discussions. It is also to bear in mind that these also go up to the full council. So it is good to table your questions and your thoughts, absolutely. But the information that we have in front of us is purely based on the instruction that this council has previously given. Jerry, could you maybe
just actually to answer Councillor Creekney's question, understand now more than ever these things are really critical, but at any time we have vacancies, just to assure the committee, the council, that we do that, this necessity of, do we need to replace, do we need to do this role differently, deliver this service differently. So we do that as a matter of course each time that we do have a vacancy.
Can
I just ask Jerry a question?
Absolutely.
Vaguely relates. How many vacancies do we have at the moment? Can you tell us where they are?
Water and wastewater reticulation assistant. One is this one is the communications engagement advisor.
Cool. Thanks.
I also have a question just for clarity. I mean, we look at this and I kind of go, wow, that's a huge headcount for a council our size. I'm also really conscious that we do have headcount for particularly two areas that our neighbouring councils contract out. So that means that they don't include their contractors in there. That's correct, isn't it? That's correct. So, so specifically, we have our own in-house waters team, which has proved invaluable when we look at the state of affairs of water and infrastructure around there, not just in Aotearoa, but nationally. And we also have in-house parks and reserves, which are from our neighbours north and south, are contracted out. Just curious, can you remind me, and I know I've read it somewhere and I can't find it, the headcount for our neighbouring councils?
So
excluding their contractors for those specific areas?
I don't have the headcount, not to be confused with full-time equivalent.
Yeah.
FTE equivalent is probably the best measure. So we're at 73, which means that a full-time employee equivalent is someone working the 40-hour week. Dow's full-time equivalent is 37.5 hours a week, so it's just a slight difference there. But in terms of Masterton, their FTE is 136 and South 68. So if they included our just almost 20 FTEs that we have in those two areas that you mentioned, that would add another 20 FTEs onto each one of those councils at a minimum.
It's actually 24 across those two areas that we have, which would then need to be added on to the headcount, the FTE equivalents. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Are there any? Yes, Councillor Nadella.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, as previously over the years has been discussed, FTEs and labour and headcounts. It's been an ongoing thing since I've been on council. But as pointed out with those figures, CDC run a pretty lean shop. and doing most of the activities in-house. So, and it has been proven time and time again that if it is contracted out, it does cost more. And we all know that, and you do not get the same level of service. You don't get the same passionate staff doing your gardens, your lawns, your cemetery, or whatever, or in-house in the event centre. So whilst it may look expensive, head count, if you look at our contracting outside bill to compare with any of the other local councils, I'm sure that we will be way down. And so that's why I would endorse our CE's strategy at the moment to keep everything in-house, and when we do have a vacancy, as Jerry says, really analyse whether we need to or what we need to do to either fill that gap or do it from in-house already. So it's pretty important that we do that, and it's just the same in any business that you'd endorse that strategy. Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other? Yes, Grace.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So I have a question with regards to some changes from last year to this year's numbers. Looking back at the ratepayers report, we had 69 equivalent staff in the 2022-2023 figures. We now have 84 staff, which Jeff confirmed in his numbers yesterday, which is a 21% change in the staff numbers. We also in that time have gone from $400,000 spent on contractors, and the last year's one was $1 million. So there's been a $600,000 increase in contractor spend, in addition to the fact that our staff numbers have gone up 21%. Why is that?
Can I just clarify, Councillor Aileen? The Taxpayers Union report refers to 69 equivalent. The corresponding number would be 73, not 84.
The numbers that the Taxpayer Union report goes off has been given to the Taxpayers Union by the council staff through the OIA process. So why is that a difference?
So the word that we're missing is equivalent. So 69 equivalent, and as Jerry has pointed out, the number of equivalent staff members is 73. We have a total head count, but not all of those staff do full-time jobs. So it's
sorry, so I'm just sorry, just to clarify, I'm looking at the OIA response that Carterton District Council provided to the ratepayer report. I can see, I know that the ratepayer report hasn't come out yet for the coming year, but you guys have answered the questions. So I am comparing the same correlating information here. The ratio management total staff numbers, 15 managers to the 82 staff. You've since said it's 84 staff, so I'm going off your information being more current than what was given to the ratepayers report via the OIA. But the number of 82 or 84 versus 69 is a steep increase. And I'm noting that the fact that there has also been an increase from 400,000 to $1 million in the contractor spend. So I'm asking why that increase has happened in addition to the increase in staff.
Well, I don't have the information on contractors to hand.
I think it's the financial thing. A lot of that contracted staff, Grace, is directly related to the district plan, because we do all the invoicing for the district plan. So they come in as contractors and consultants. So I'm just saying that might be part of that, but then the often that money comes in as recoverables. That is definitely triggering because we invoice everything under that budget, and then we recover our portions only 25.5%, so the rest of it gets recovered from the other two councils for any work associated with the district plan costs.
So you would expect the 400,000 the previous year. We'd be looking at a similar figure for contractors this year, excluding numbers that we can get back from the combined district plan.
If the district plan budget is coming out of that line, then yes, because we've been working on this significantly for the last 2 years and a little bit the previous year, and it would also be next year and the year after.
Cool, thank you, Solitaire.
So there are recoverables.
We recover.
So that's a gross figure, which in my head, sorry, I'm just trying to get in my head, that's a gross figure that includes the district plan, but then we have a recoverables, which would offset that figure. So that figure.
If it's directly related to that, we might need to check that, but with the district plan, we pay 100% of it. And then we recover 74.5% for almost.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Solitaire.
Any other?
Well, just, is it possible, I don't know this, so this is a question for you, that some of that contractor expense relates to the Three Waters work?
Not a significant amount. We did end up using a contractor to reassess our debt position when DIA came through with a debt number that we weren't quite happy with. So we did, there will be some Three Waters contractor cost in there, yes. Not as much as district plan.
Are there any other questions before we have discussions? Any discussion members would like to have? Councillor Ayling.
Hi, I just think it's worth us as a council having a conversation around our level of comfort with these staffing numbers as they stand. And I totally acknowledge the comments that were had this morning around it's the level of service that causes the number of staff that we have. So I think that is all part of the conversation, absolutely. And I think over the last 18 months since being elected, I've continued to put my hand up and say I have questions around this or that, and each time I've been told that's a conversation for the long-term plan. So I just really hope that we take this opportunity to have the conversation, as this is the long-term plan, around our levels of comfort with our staff numbers increasing. Based off the numbers that council provided, 21% in that last year, I just think we need to be willing. I know it is very awkward to discuss staff numbers when you're sitting in a room with staff. So I totally acknowledge that this is an uncomfortable conversation to have. However, our job as governance is to have those uncomfortable conversations when we've got a rates number that is sitting around that 15% figure. We've got to be looking at where we can cut costs. And I think if Grant Robinson was able to find a few $1 billion to cut, we could as well.
He also gave away 70 billion.
Councillor Bretney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add to what Grace has suggested. Honestly, I've just lost my train of thought. Okay. I'll come back to it. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
May I?
Yes.
So, Councillor Ayling, I think you, if I could admit you've got me at a disadvantage, perhaps I could take an action to reconcile the information that I circulated yesterday with regards the full-time equivalent and the number of headcount versus the taxpayer union IA. I can see one of my staff waving at me just about to clarify my position.
Sorry, Councillor Ayling, just would have been trying to find the request actually related specifically not as a total number of FTEs or headcount, but asked particular questions of FTE numbers around specific areas. So that's why there may be a difference in what the figures you've got. But certainly we haven't had a 21, FTE or headcount increase in that time.
Sorry, I'm happy to, I'll just flick you, it's from the Carterton District Council's website. I can email everyone else so you can see the screen I'm looking at, if that's helpful.
I'm happy to take an action to reconcile the two, because obviously there's two lots of information and we need to figure out why the numbers may be different. So,
yep.
Sorry, Councillor, through you, Madam Chair, can you say that again, please? Because I'm still having trouble with my hearing aids, but did you say you got that information off the Carterton Council, that OAA information off the Carterton Council website?
Yes, so when,
Can you just tell it, sorry, just, can you tell us which number it is? Is that under the Lagoima documents? And
hang
which
on.
number it is?
It was from the 2nd of February. I can just send it to you guys. So the,
No, if you could just, sorry, just for, if people are listening, also they may want to check it. Can you tell us?
Request
the Lagoima number?
2023-94.
Yeah, correct.
Madam Chair, if I can just get back to the point I was going to raise, sorry. Thinking back to decisions that we've made already has an impact on our staffing levels. And one of those impacts is cycle trails and an associated staff member alongside that. So we need to remember that around the table that these decisions that we've made previously count towards some of those staff that we have here.
And exactly to my point earlier that we're having discussions around this now. There are some action points that will be going to the CE and his team for preparing a paper that will come up to the full council meeting when the LTP. So there's certain recommendations from this hearings committee that will go up from decisions that have been made around here. Then there's other information that has been requested that it comes up to the full council meeting for when we do discuss and adopt the LTP. So is that, this would fall under that category?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, we as a council, as governance, we set the work program. We decide the levels of service, which we've done, and we employ the CE to employ the number of staff he or she believes they need in order to carry out those levels of service and the work program that we've set. It's a bit rich at the 11th hour to criticise the CE for hiring too many people. You know, I just think we have to be careful about you know, not just grabbing the low-hanging fruit, and because we've set and right throughout the year, the CE, either through the CE's report or bringing, if it's unbudgeted and it's extra staff members, comes to the council for approval every single time. So I'm just unclear as to why we believe we can, just because we don't like the rates number, that we can hook into the staffing numbers when we've been part of that progression of levels of service, work program and communication all the way through. Help me out here.
Yeah,
I'd love to. That's right.
I'd love to help them out.
Please do.
Yeah, look, so I guess in defence of your councillors, and no one's trying to hook into the CE, and I acknowledge the awkwardness of having a conversation around staffing levels in front of management. You know, it's not a tidy place to be at if you're trying to do your job as a government and you're very mindful of the potential rates increases and people like Mike Johns' submission, which we all heard. So but I guess, could I suggest, Dale, that to determine and have an idea of what level of service you want prior to the realisation of real numbers is one thing, but a review process enables you to sit back and say, whoa, was I in cuckoo land at the time? Was I not thinking about this? And so I understand why people might now be looking back and considering, well, did we start at the right place? I mean, if we were to take the central government view, if you do a 6% cut, see, get on with it. That's one way. I don't think that's an appropriate way.
We're not central government,
no,
we are local.
That's why I say, but there is an argument that you could say based on either it's time to, maybe this is a time to have a think about we're wanting a highest level of service, and maybe there is a time where we think around priorities, because, you know, I'm shifting ground as we tick off items and approve huge hunks of money. And I've taken on board firmly the CE's comment. The last deliberations, he said, it's OPEX where you'll make the difference. And I've got that firmly in my head now. And I've got Mike Jones and other submitters in that list of names firmly in my head. So forgive me if I'm reflecting on my position today with more information to what I had 6 months ago when we were talking about service levels. I'd probably think I'd ask the CEO to review the service levels right now. And here we are at this gate with a very short timeline. So it's a dilemma. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess, again, trying to stay in our lane as governance, we don't, like the CE doesn't set the levels of service. We do, and we do at a certain time, just like fees and charges, there's a certain time in the process.
Yeah.
Levels of service were way long ago in this LTP process, because you need to determine the levels of service before you can then start crunching numbers to bring it forward for this final part of the process. So it's very challenging or unorthodox in my experience to then be relitigating levels of service at this time in order to manipulate the levels of service to reach a number that's been driven, you know what I mean? And so I'm just trying to protect it in the process, notwithstanding the timeline we've got and so forth. I just don't see how it's possible to negotiate an appropriate number of staff when we've already predetermined the levels of service.
Just one other clarification of Councillor Ayling's Lagoima comment, and it actually, the information that was forwarded related to the 2022-23 financial year, just to clarify for anyone listening.
What is the information that I forwarded is most current. Yes,
exactly. So that could be a discrepancy.
And for clarity, it's just including casual staff. So they may be on-call casuals that sit on our payroll. So technically employed by us, but may only be used once a year.
Thank you. Councillor Cretney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in reply to Dale and talking about levels of service, I'm not sure how you put a level of service to the creation of a project. To me, you're talking about creating a new project and putting funding towards it, which has an attachment to it of operations cost. So what's the operational cost for the cycle trails, which includes possibly Glenda's time, Kirsty's time, infrastructure and services to do with any roading input. So all of that OPEX that's involved in the cycle trails should really be put towards what the actual cycle trail is going to cost when we go throwing money into it.
It is, isn't it, Jeff? It has to be.
So if it is a capital project, staff's time that is related to that capital project will be coded to that capital project. So it will come out of OPEX and go into CAPEX.
Does that answer your question?
So if we didn't approve the spending of that 805,000, where would a staff member be in that position if we hadn't approved the 805?
Well, in the case of trails, so we would just talk about specifically about trails.
It's a difficult one to talk about because of.
But in that case, that function, so there was no ratepayer funding associated with that. That was all covered from subsidy. So external funding is covering it in that particular case.
Yes, the 805.
Yeah, so that was better off funding subsidy that's covering that cost.
And the rollout
carry forward. There was no
ratepayer.
There was no ratepayer. Well,
no, but
there's no charge to rates.
No, but there is a potential to alleviate rates if you don't use it for that purpose.
Sure. If the better off funding was reallocated to something else,
it would alleviate and push down rates. So we're choosing not to alleviate.
So we did, that was part of the conversation that we had
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
last week in deliberations as well.
Yeah.
So that was specifically discussed before it went to the vote last week. Any other conversations? Our CE has some actions.
Yep, I've taken an action. We need to reconcile back between the OAA report that we have on our website versus the information that I provided more recently. I can immediately see there is a timing difference between those two and maybe the casuals, but we will provide that information. We've got an action to do that.
I guess my question then through you to the CE is it's all to just talking about head counts. I tend to look at OPEX and picking on your comment. I mean, if there's a driver that provides some relief to ratepayers potential rating, it is an OPEX. If it was proposed that there'd be a 5% reduction, what is the challenge for you to do that, and what would your pitch be to the council? Is it just around service delivery, or is it around KPIs that already exist? What would it be? How would you? And I'm just looking at the other people's examples.
So my response back would be, where are the areas that council would not wish us to look at? So if I start with, let's pick the, there are, I believe, I'm not an elected member, but I believe there's two things that communities don't wish us to touch, and one is usually car parking, the other one's libraries. So if I'm given a carte blanche cut by 5% or 7% or whatever it is, and I come back with a cut to car parks and libraries, what will be the response? So are there areas that, if you wish me to go and look at opportunities, that you would like to exclude me from looking at? That would be my question of council. What are the service level areas that you think want to be touched?
On that first, I've got
Thank you,
Williams first. And then
Jeff, and His Worship for raising it. That was going to be my question. In order to progress this conversation, my question is to those councillors who raise staffing as an issue for them. What's the magic number? Where do you want us to take this conversation? If we have a conversation around staffing levels, and I would contend that the levels of service determine the staffing levels, and that's the chief executive's decision to employ the people, the number of people he needs to meet our expectations. If some of us don't agree, what do you want? Where do we? Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Aileen.
Hi, thanks for that. I liked Dale's question there. I think it really helps. For me personally, I remember when we started, we talked about the long-term plan. We have a council position that our rates increases are no more than Burl plus 2%. I wonder if you could answer, Jeff, what Burl is at the moment. I know that's tied to inflation, but I know it's slightly different to inflation. Do you know what
the Burl cost index was in our LTP consultation document, so I don't have it off the top of about 2.5%. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
On personnel. So it's about 2.5% on personnel, but I do note that there are sections of Burl. So we use a section of Burl on personnel, say, and we use a different part of Burl to calculate capital construction costs for infrastructure, because those costs are changing at a different pace to, say, personnel. So it's 2.5% on personnel, but it's a different number and a higher number on capital construction. I seem to recall it was closer to 9 or 10% per annum.
Because to answer Dale's question, my level of comfort would be that council operate within that sort of realm of Burl plus 2% for our operating costs, which would take our rates increase at least in single digits. So that would be sort of my thinking. So then I look at, okay, what is the OPEX? And 40% of our operating costs is staff. So it seems an obvious place to look at. And it's not a personal attack on any staff member. It's saying in terms of cost, that's a very clear portion of our operating cost. And you said this morning in our meeting, operating cost is the surest way to change year one on the long-term plan. And year one on the long-term plan is a big number. I'm looking at ways that we can get that big number less scary for our people who are stressing about the potential of a rates increase anywhere near the level we're looking at. So to answer Dale's question, bill plus 2% or the inflation plus 2%, that seems like something that council has flagged in the past as being our comfort level. I'm wondering why we are so far past that prescribed comfort level.
William.
Thank you. I mean, I'm not highly educated. That sounds like the theoretical view. From the practical view, my question to you, Grace, would be, as Jeff said, what do we do less of? Because again, our role as governance has been determined, taking feedback from ratepayers as to what they want done on our roads, what they want done around the community, and so on and so on. And so when we have those workshops around levels of service, we debate that and settle on a level of service that we believe will meet our ratepayers' expectations. So if we cap our staff, my question would be, and I'm not saying we don't do that, but my question is, what do we do less of or not at all in order to reduce the level of service to enable a reduction in numbers?
Yeah, through the chair. So I really found the, I've got a printed copy, the spreadsheet that Jeff gave us yesterday with the staff numbers. It looks like a family tree to me of staff. I found that really helpful to understand the broad picture of where everyone sits and what departments they sit under, and just where the high levels of staff are. If I look at that and I compare it to the information in the OAA that I've circulated, and you know, this OAA was signed by Jeff, so I believe the information is correct. You mentioned 60 core staff, and core staff refers to full-time employed staff working on delivery and or maintenance of local infrastructure. That's 32.23. Full-time staff employed to provide regulatory functions, 12.45 FTE equivalent. And customer-facing roles, 14.85. That leaves us with 24 staff who are considered by the CEO as not core staff. That is where I would be looking to see how we can make those numbers go down. Hope that answers your question, Dale.
So I can talk about the budget and what I have reiterated a number of times is we're not budgeting for any increase in headcount. In fact, we're budgeting for a decrease in headcount, and the cost number in the budget, I believe we've discussed at workshops with council, and it's assumed a 3% overall cost increase in personnel cost. That's the budget. A headcount number going down and an overall 3% number for salary change.
So that is less than bill plus 2%. Okay. I just have a question around seeing you raise the bill index. Given the state, and I know we are specifically focused on Carterton District Council, but probably to put stuff into perspective a little bit, nationwide, I'm just curious, how many councils around New Zealand are going to be doing their ideal of bill plus whatever their percentage may be? It's just, I mean, like I'm not really expecting anyone to possibly be able to answer it, but it's just kind of flagged a question in my mind going, like we're not the only ones in this predicament as my.
Just in reply to that, Madam Chair, though, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to any other councils.
No, and I didn't say we were. I said I was curious.
I understand.
And how others are. So actually, it was just a kind of a curious. I mean, God, we're having these discussions. Wouldn't be the only ones that are.
What's the way forward? We can have a theory versus practical debate all day, but it doesn't get us any further. So
No.
where do we go from there?
So Grace, do you have your hand up again, or have you not put it down?
No, I have my hand up again. So I can see where you're coming from, Rob, when you're saying, look, we're all in this mess, so let's not worry about the fact that our number is so high. I'm
sorry, excuse me, that's not what I was saying. I just said I was just curious, wondering what the other conversations. I'm certainly not saying not worrying about our numbers. So that was complete misinterpretation.
Okay. No, I'm glad to hear you are concerned as well and working towards getting that number down. The fact is we can only control what this council does around this table. We can't control what the other councils are doing. And so we have to be comfortable with the number that we have, irrespective of the mess that other councils are in.
Right. So thank you. To Dale's point, what is the way forward on this? Obviously, it's.
Put a vote.
So is there a motion? What is the motion? I mean, the staffing levels were put up for today because they requested to be discussed. So does anybody have a motion to put to this meeting that can be then recommended up to full council? Because we are saying a lot of the same things, and we do.
I've got no idea what a motion would look like, because I get, well, I'll put it this way, because the staffing levels at this moment are determined by a series of processes, there's no motion appropriate to enforce the current level. It falls back to those who raised it as an issue to put up a motion of what would satisfy you, and then that would get put and it would pass or not.
Yeah,
is how I would see it.
So is there a motion that either Councillor Ayling or Councillor Cretney or His Worship Ron would like to put to the table? Councillor Ayling?
I would move that council seeks to put a hiring freeze in place. So no staff numbers to be increased in the process of this long-term plan, and that any vacancies that need to be filled go to a full council for approval.
Just clarifying what you've said. So seek to put a hiring freeze for the process of the long-term plan?
So for the duration that we put
for the life of the long-term plan.
Well, every 3 years we'll rejig this. So yep, for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I was just clarifying. You actually used the word process. So I was just clarifying whether you meant process or whether you meant the long-term plan.
The long-term plan, I'll be clearer. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Gallen, you had your.
They were talking about 3 vacancies before. Is this going to have an effect on that?
There's so sorry, from the spreadsheet that Jeff circulated yesterday, there were more than 3 vacancies. There was also a vacancy in the Parks and Reserves team. There was a zero waste coordinator vacant role. I think there was more like 4 or 5. So yeah, I would say that council, if we need an action, it would either be an overall percentage decrease or there'd be a motion to freeze increases in salary. That would be my motion.
So I have a question on that before we go to actually clarify a correctly worded motion.
Mm-hmm.
Would be to the CE and with your role as CE and as council, and I'm probably not going to say this right.
To management.
So I guess my question is our role as elected members is we have 1 employee and that is our CE. That's correct, isn't it?
Correct.
And then the CE's role delegation is to employ staff. That is correct. So what Councillor Ayling is we still haven't got a clear motion, but what Councillor Ayling is speaking about, I'm unsure of the ramifications of that around C delegation. I'm not making myself very clear. Can you interpret my gobble? Yeah.
Councillor Ayling, I don't think you are able to have staff appointments come back to the council meeting. I
Right.
think you're allowed to make a single appointment, which as a council, which is the CE, and all other staff are employed by the CE. So I
Yeah.
don't believe that council can remove that delegation that is given to the CE under the Local Government Act and bring it up to the council table.
No, that's fair. Can council give the directive to the CE to begin a pay freeze? Sorry, not a pay freeze, a salary staffing number freeze. Is that within our delegation?
Again, I think that may contravene the Local Government Act, because the role of management is to deliver the outcomes that council require, as opposed, and so in this case, you're attempting to manage the inputs required to deliver the outcome. Your resolution needs to focus on what is the outcome that you require rather than the input, i.e. this. Yeah, so in this case, I don't believe you'll be able to instruct on staff. You could potentially instruct on a overall rates reduction number, or a cost reduction number,
Yeah.
or a cap, but I don't believe you could talk specifically about roles.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Thank you for that guidance. Okay, I would move a motion that we have a 5 to 6% decrease in the staffing costs budgeted in this long-term plan.
5 to 6. Which one?
That's a number that central government are floating with. So let's go for 5.
So the motion by Councillor Aileen is to move that budgeted staffing costs are reduced by 5%. Are you getting this, Robin? For this LTP 2024 to 34. Is that the motion, Councillor Aileen?
Yep. Thank you.
We just will let's just so does anybody around the table second Councillor Aileen's motion? So there being no seconders, that motion has failed. You had a question, Councillor Newman.
I was just trying to clarify, how can we ask something that will then flow onto levels of service?
Exactly, and which is what
then going to have to go for concert, like that isn't.
And that's what Councillor Williams was saying before.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was just trying to get my head around.
So that is exactly the thing.
And given that we're in the discussion phase, that's Madam Chair.
So
I find myself acknowledging points that the CE has made. But there are parts of that whole conversation which I'd want checked and validated against the Local Government Act. Because if we were to take that argument that council can't make any decisions about staffing numbers, about pay rises, about that, then what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah.
I mean, that means if we can't make any decisions at all around how money is appropriated, we simply employed a CE, he's in charge, he's running the whole show, then what are we doing here? Now, that's why. So I don't believe the purist view, the academic view, in that respect is correct. And I think we just need to be clear as we go through these deliberations as what is our role. I'm of the view that, as I said before, I question the level of operational expenditure katoa across the board. I understand the CE's got a contract and he's got KPIs. And we have previously, prior to this process kicking off, all said in an ideal world, these are the perfect and wonderful service delivery, levels that we want. But reality is hitting us now. And these submissions can't be ignored. And the submissions that you've all had privately, as Dale's alluded to and Brian, you've alluded to on another matter where people got in your ear, they didn't write a submission. They didn't tell you what they thought about Georgina's statue in writing, but they told you clearly. So it's in your head, as these things are. So we have to find a pathway forward, Dale, that satisfies us all that we're doing the best we possibly can for our ratepayers. And there's a line between that discussion and this discussion over here that we've got to settle out.
So, question that, do you have a suggested, I mean, this discussion in another ilk, bearing in mind some of the decisions that have been made in deliberations, obviously will go up to council. There will be a new report, new jigged figures, etc., for council to make the decisions around the long-term plan.
Yeah.
I guess my question to the table is we've had some really, really good, robust discussions, and it's highlighted a whole load of things. Are we happy is probably not the right word, but would we be comfortable with the discussions that we've had, some of the actions that we have given to our CE for when we have the report to go to the extraordinary meeting for us to actually recommend or receive the indictment? So I mean, have you, what exactly do we want from this conversation?
What you've
because
done.
it needs to go, it will go up, and I reiterate, the decisions that we have had through deliberations have been very robust. That will go to full council for the vote for the LTP. So what, is there anything around this conversation? Is there a motion that needs to be put to this committee? Yes or no? Oh, Ron?
I'm not at that point where I can formulate a motion in my head, so that's why this conversation is really important, because it's going to tell me, no, that's dumb, or maybe that's worth exploring. So what I have found hugely helpful, Madam Chair, is new information. The chief has taken away some points that we've made, and staff have come back with answers and given us more information. That's been really helpful. These documents that I'm looking at on my screen are helpful right now. If I was to rush to a decision, and now we've got a bunch of new questions that we've asked, having those helps, that information come back to the deliberation table is helpful. If I was to say, let's push on ahead and deliberate on it, I would worry that when the final papers are presented to us for the final council hearing, we might all end up in a deeper conversation than we might well have been had we not had that information earlier. I mean, I'm looking to see how things flatten out, and this information in front of here has been helpful. And I thank the chief for that, because it wasn't there in the original documents.
What are you referring to?
I'm looking at the staffing tables and the staffing numbers that he's given, and also the business cases, that other information. Yeah, so we asked for that during the deliberations, and it's come. It's been good. And whether we like it or we don't, we've had it. We still have asked some more questions around details and how things would be implemented. It's good to get that information because it helps us move forward.
And we will have that information in time.
But I don't know if I can frame up a motion right now.
And maybe, sorry, Councillor Williams, you go.
Oh, just that unless we're making changes to the status quo, no motion is necessary, I would have thought. I guess I just want to come back to, because look, I understand the basis behind the conversation, but I just think the numbers where we land at this point in the process is a little bit like death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, I think I'll give one example. Councillor Carterton mentioned it earlier, the Wainawa Water Project. If you remember, we agreed at the start to a series of gates. Now, the most recent time, staff came back, Johannes came back and recommended that we stop. That was the recommendation. We decided that we wanted to proceed. Nothing wrong with that. I was part of that decision. But that forms the levels of service, the staffing, you know what I mean? Every decision we've made in the last 18 months has been a cumulative effect to the numbers of people we employ to deliver on the work program that we have sanctioned. I understand we, at this point in the process, when it all becomes clear in the light of day, we balk at it. I get that, but we've also got to be professional and responsible enough not to look for a scapegoat or look for an easy out, because it isn't an easy out.
I do take exception, whether you meant it or not, but questioning people's professionalism and responsibility in such a way, Dale, could be taken as an offence. You know, please be cautious. I mean, we've all got to be responsible and we've all got to be professional. What I'm seeing is very professional.
And Ron, actually, to your point, there was exactly that occurred earlier, and I think let's all be mindful. And as I had said on numerous occasions over these 3 days of hearings and deliberations, we need to be respectful for each other. We are a team, as I keep saying. We quite healthy to have disagreements. In my head, these conversations we've had, I think, have been really, really good. I don't think there is anything specifically for a motion on this to be decided upon by the hearings committee. I think our discussions that we have had, the information we have received and the information that we will receive ahead of the extraordinary council meeting for the LTP, hopefully adoption, we will be in a better place once we've had that additional information coming to us. I think from my point of view, I have noted and I've taken on board everyone's comments, and it's helping me formulate things in my mind as well. I would recommend that I don't think there's anything more to be spoken about around this.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? What process do we want to have for, you mentioned further information. I'm unclear what we've asked the chief executive. In my mind, there's nothing I need.
The further information I am referring to, the decisions that have been voted upon today and today.
Yeah.
Those figures will be coming forward in a revised and a report.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about.
No, I'm not talking about stuff. I said that's all part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
I've also got an action point to reconcile the OIA report from Taxpayers Union 2023 last year annual report versus the data on staff today.
I just wanted to, sorry, Madam Chair, I just really wanted to be clear that if councillors are going to go ask for more information after today to assist, I just wonder how much work we're going to expect from staff to answer our individual questions. I just want to know what the process is.
So bearing in mind, this is, I've noted, Councillor Craig.
No worries.
This process that we're engaged in at the moment is we have hearings and deliberations following long-term plans. This is part of that. So today are deliberations on the long-term plan, and then any agreed changes from these deliberations that have been voted on, and as we all know, they haven't all been unanimous. Some have gone through and some have not gone through. So any of these agreed changes will be reflected in an updated draft long-term plan, which will then be for the consideration and received at the extraordinary council meeting. That's correct, isn't it?
So just to that's the adjourned meeting, isn't it?
Yes,
We started
correct.
8 o'clock last Wednesday night.
Yeah, absolutely correct. So from my point of view, that's what this has been about.
Yep, cool.
This is what we have all been participating in, and that is our outcome from today. Well, from the culmination of these deliberations. So Councillor Cretney had his hand up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff, can you just confirm for me, trying to think back about it, probably an hour ago, you mentioned you're looking at lowering the level of staff. Is that something you mentioned?
So in terms of budgeted staff numbers,
yes,
the budget for staff numbers this year is higher than year one of the LTP.
When you say this year, you mean the one where
the current year we're at.
2023.
So, and I've been consistent with my messaging to both my team and to council that we are not adding staff in the LTP. We're actually dropping a rock.
Answer your question.
So I'd like to move a motion then that the budget moving for the next 3 years remains at 7.1 or 7.2 million, whichever it is at the moment, or whichever is reflected to be, I think in our LTP at the moment, is it 7.1 million?
Are we able to do that under the Employment Act or whatever acts govern that kind of stuff? Sorry.
You are able to cap, absolutely. My
CPI.
note is that capping it for at a fixed number for 3 years could create quite a lot of employment issues.
Okay.
Yeah, because you'd either have, you'd either have a pay freeze, which is not going to help us retain staff, or you're going to have a sinking lid, which may also be a challenge. Is that what you meant?
Well, I'm just going off what Jeff has conveyed. If there's less staff, you've got more of a budget. Kind of.
That's not what he said.
But that's in
That's not what he said.
That's how you talk.
Yeah.
There's one staff member earning $7.1 million.
Superwoman.
Let's just bring that. So is there a motion on the table or not? Or has that answered your question, Councillor Cretney?
Yeah, I'm probably putting council in a difficult position. So I'll
Okay.
rescind.
Thank you.
My question is not one, Madam Chair, I believe could be answered here, that it might be useful to get information. I'm looking at that headcount centre paragraph there.
So what are you looking at where?
Email from the CE 21st of May at 2:06 p.m. in the afternoon. And it says in 2016-20, the FTE was increased as a result of, and the numbers are there, bringing staff contracted in-house, and it lists different departments they came in. FTE Wairarapa shared staff, 2.8. Got a question around whether that's still valid given other councils' positions sealed. 7.2 FTE IT, Mayor, CE, that's only a 10-hour job. Democratic Services and the rest of it. Then it says in 2021, FTE was increased as a result of 7.5. I guess particularly when I think about the decisions to bring certain functions back in-house, have we done a post-implementation review as to whether or not those changes met the projected gains and whether we achieved those gains, or was it successful? Can we say that it was a smart decision to bring stuff back in-house? And here's the reason it should continue. And here we are, and we should do more of it. Or does it say, actually, didn't show any measurable change at all? I'm a big fan of post-implementation reviews so we can validate our decisions we made and maybe pull back or go forward again. Has that analysis been done?
It's a really good question. So it's technically called a Section 17A review, and we have one planned for our one of our teams that we have brought back in-house for next year. You're absolutely right, and that is planned in our work.
I'm right a lot.
Next year.
Yeah.
Yes, time's wrong. Goodness.
Oh, it's experience, Madam Chair. It's just experience. Remember that?
Are we confident that we have discussed this enough? I'm conscious that there is another item that was on our little whiteboard that we haven't had a discussion around, and there being no motions being put to the table, then I propose that maybe we're not going to be kicked out of the room. Okay, great. I know we.
No, the irony was there was a corporate booking that we've had to move.
Income generating.
So,
it is rather ironic.
On the whiteboard, one of our members put up things to discuss. So just clarifying, discuss. Let's see if we have the discussion with a mind. Is there going to be a motion for something to be referred to the extraordinary council meeting or not? So just have that in mind when we're going through this process. So Sludge.
I know, I'd just like some final clarity on staffing levels from the CE. You've mentioned, Chief, that we're not seeing staff increases, so we can take that as read. You've noted that the committee is concerned about staff numbers and the impact on. So I'd probably move that the hearings committee see as expressed.
So it's so that part of deliberations is for us to vote on decisions that will go up to affect the LTP. So it's an action item.
Yeah.
I think we all know that we have heard and discussed this at length. So we are actually looking for decisions that will then be referred up for changes to the draft LTP, which noting something is not part of forming a change to the LTP.
No,
Yep.
So we're noting the actions, basically.
Yeah.
So actually have done to be taken.
We're noting the actions.
So
Okay.
So should we talk about sludge?
well, I'm hoping to, but
Yeah.
It's not-
are we on to sludge now? Are you a sludge question?
Yes,
Yay.
thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move that we move the first year out to the third year of the proposed LTP plan for the first pond cleanings. And subsequently there's a 2-year gap following those, and the last one is down for year 10.
So you are proposing that the
Year 1 spend or the proposed budget set aside for sludge removal in year 1 is moved to year 3.
do we have anyone to second that? His Worship the Mayor has seconded that. Open for discussion around this, risks, etc., to be tabled. First of all, Councillor Gallen, Councillor Williams, Councillor Dalla.
I think it's a big number we're playing with, and also it's a bit of Russian roulette. You know, like we can put some more aerators in if you like, but it doesn't solve the problem that pops up next summer or the summer after. I think we're mindful of that.
Of the risks involved in deferring it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my question would be to Johannes. I think he referred at one point that it was possible to defer for a year or two. I just want some reassurance around what that's going to mean to the management of our network.
Through you, Chair, I think but before I talk to the practical concern I have with that is the reason why we spread out the wastewater projects was to kind of manage the impact in the financial year. If we choose to move the desludging to year 3, we align it with the largest chunk of the wastewater headworks upgrade, meaning that we're going to have a very difficult annual plan discussion in year 2, in end of year 2. And I would just think we should be mindful of that. In terms of the desludging, the ideal, we started off with having desludging all our ponds. We then dialed it back to desludging 1. I think it is prudent that we do it as soon as possible, seeing that it has been deferred for so long. Sooner would be better. And yeah, that's all I can say.
I take your point about the timing. Yeah.
And on the question on that, you're saying soon would be better. So the risks of a failure in unbudgeted expenditure potentially in the first year or 2 of our LTP is, would you say that that's a very high risk? Or potentially if we do, like, if we don't have anything in the LTP, if we defer.
It's unlikely that desludging will result in a catastrophic failure at one point. We will just continuously really lose heating capacity within the oxidation ponds. It's not like something that can break, but it does become full.
Degrade.
It degrade. So the capacity to store more becomes less and less, and then
Our efficiency in treatment reduces as the percentage of sludge increases.
what's the impact of that?
It
Smells.
Apart from the smells, yeah.
so smell and treatment. So the effectiveness of our oxidation process is diminished, and we can get to a point where we have water that is not within the limits to irrigate or discharge when it leaves the oxidation fields.
And we had this discussion recently, didn't we, around that? Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify on that.
Yeah, just thank you for that, because the actual timing of it hadn't quite occurred to me. But if we took up the motion of Councillor Cretney and fast forwarded 2 years, and we're sitting around this table and facing a large rate increase again, and the two major expenditure items are all around wastewater, I know what we would do. We would start cutting or deferring or pushing, and we'd end up with a simply because with both those big items in our lap in the 1 year, that would be a hard object to move forward with. So I think if there's a way of accommodating Councillor Cretney's motion with something that doesn't align those two major projects, then
I'm happy to adjust my motion, Madam Chair, and let's move it to year 4. And then it is not in line with the headworks upgrade in the long-term plan. And the second pond, which is actually proposed to be done in the same year, I would like to see that moved out to year 6, and then the subsequent one in year 7 moved out to year 8.
Sorry, can I just say that addresses the first question, but I guess the second part of Johannes's comments were sooner the better. So pushing it out from years 3 to 4, that kind of goes against that. You know what I mean? Again, I'm not a technical expert, but we employ one, and I'm trying to align a good, prudent governance decision with the realities of the engineering decisions that we have to take responsibility for. Let me dwell on that while others ask questions.
So we'll clarify all the wording exactly from the motion that is on the table.
I'd like to hear from Councillor Della, who's had his hand up.
Yeah.
Who knows about.
Yeah, so he was.
I think
close to me.
Thank you, Steve. Is a lot of it's already been said, but there is a risk, and the risk being that if that pond turns upside down again, whether it's because it's been loaded with chemical or something that's inferior to the process, or it is because aerators have been shifted or fail. That it's a hell of a risk. And whilst we've had problems in the last couple of 3 years with this, the way I see it now is we basically have a plan in place already. It is going to cost. The risk is if we don't do it soon, we're going to have ongoing problems. And as Steve has already accentuated, that it is going to end up in some of our high rates increase years. And that might be by default or unplanned, unbudgeted money. The other risk I see, if we don't do anything and we leave it till year 6 or 7, all we'll have to do is put 100 mils of topsoil on it and a bit of grass, and we can call it a playground. Will it be that full?
Thank you for your professional. Excuse me. Sorry.
See the headlines.
Yeah.
Some things you can't unsee.
No, it's just kind of like, did you see this? Any other discussion points from anyone else around the table on the motion that is in front of us? That sounds a really bad word as well.
Given that I seconded it, yeah, obviously there would be another comment. Chair, look, funny, Brian, but the fact is those sludge ponds haven't been done for 60 years.
That's the problem.
And we haven't sown grass on them yet. Secondly, I think you're right to say there's a risk. But we're talking about an immediate impact on rates right now, and the question around where we're going to be and addressing that and trying to crystal ball what the impact of this motion would have on rates in out years is irrelevant, given that we all know for a fact that there's going to be a WC run out, not this council. So it won't be this council factoring in rates increases on that work, because we have just covered off in the risk and assurance meeting the plan for us divesting that asset and handing it over to another entity, and who are, as we said in that committee meeting, we took the message from the CE and the other advisors, are going to increase their charges to meet this need. So I think we're crystal balling on inaccurate assumption, inaccurate information. This will not be a Carterton District Council asset come the next review of a long-term plan. This will not be a Carterton District asset that's hitting the rates considerations that we're going to face at that time. So I see the risk. That's why I've seconded the motion. It's quite different, and we've just invested in a new aerator. There is a challenge that potentially a pond turns upside down, and we deal with it the same way we did this one. We had good public relations. We had good explanations in the media, and it calmed down more swiftly, Chief, than I've seen it ever calm down, thanks to the expertise of the comm staff. So I don't see the risk as being as punishing as some might see it. That's why I seconded the motion.
Thank you. Just to reiterate that I take on board what you said about the local water done well. Yeah. We must remember that still nothing has been decided in concrete about that. So we do need to, and I can see that the writing is fairly clearly on the wall, but we also need to make decisions with the information that we have in concrete informations today. Councillor Cretney and Councillor Williams, I know you both have your hands up. I would actually like to hear from the councillors on this side of the table who have been very quiet.
I just have a question of clarification. I was talking about CapEx or OpEx when we come to desludging.
This is $500,000 CapEx in year one, and an inflated $500,000 of CapEx in year 4, and another inflated $500,000 in year 7.
So the three ponds. Not as dramatic. It was $500,000 of OpEx, which would be 2.5% of rates or something.
That's right.
You don't care about.
What I can't get my head around is when we thought Three Waters was happening, we were trying to get our assets in the best position they could possibly be and to hand over, acknowledging that people wouldn't worry about little Carterton. But now we don't want to do that. I don't understand what's changed. It's a question.
It's a question.
For me,
anybody who can answer it? I just can't get my head around that. I haven't quite been able to understand what has changed.
But for me, what's changed?
It just seems to be like a general position of the council. Councillor Cretney?
I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. I actually have a question for Johannes. Just around the risk. Do you perceive the risk that we had 10 years ago with the sludge ponds? What is the increased percentage of risk now than what we had 10 years ago with the ponds?
Well, the quantity of sludge is obviously increased over the last 10 years, meaning the risk is much higher because the sludge volume increases on a daily basis. So the risk is higher. The risk of losing the pond is much higher than it was 10 years ago.
I'm not sure. Just if I can answer your question, kind of. I'm not sure that the cleaning of the sludge the ponds of sludge was part of us handing that over in a better condition.
No.
That was not part of the conversation.
Can I ask Hannes to give his thoughts on it?
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Through the chair, certainly, mate.
Through the chair, desludging of the ponds has always been part of getting, doing the best that we can with our asset and getting the most effective wastewater treatment plant. Desludging has exceeded or very difficult for all councils around the country, and most councils has deferred that and will have to deal with it at some point. So it was always when we said we're gonna leave this in the best possible condition. Desludging has always been part of the plan. Desludging was brought to this council, I think, before my time, and it was deferred back then. I am nervous of continuing to defer something as critical as that.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Councillor Dalla.
Thank you. I think most of my explanation has already been said, but as has already been said, we have been deferring this since the last 9 years that I've been on council, or before that even. It has always been a thought. The reason why it has been deferred is the physical cost of it, and looking for alternative ways. In answer to your question, Lou, it is a cost thing, and I think that's where Steve and Ron are coming from, to try and get a rates reduction somehow. But it's not something that we can put off forever. It's got to happen at some stage, and it's going to cost the more we leave it. So that's, yeah.
And no one's saying put it off.
That actually, so.
No, yeah.
Councillor
We'll
Brickley.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, just thinking about our waste minimisation and management plan. Part of that waste minimisation and management plan is our region has to set up an organics plant. And that organics plant could potentially take the sludge from wastewater treatment plants. So that has to be done by 2028. Is that? So in my mind, if we're putting this off and there's a new organics set up, whether it's in the Wairarapa or whether it's we will have somewhere to put this sludge that is removed from the ponds. So that's just something to think about.
Definitely have. Or is that, I'm not being smart.
The organics plant is proposed to be set up to take.
So it's proposed, but so at the moment.
It has to happen in the waste minimisation management plan.
Jeff.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Kia ora. One of the things I was going to say was, as part of the wastewater conversation that management had, was the sequence of events. And there are two projects in here that relate to wastewater, and one is the headworks. I really hate using that word, but one is the headworks and the other is sludge removal. And we had a really good debate about which one should come first, because it does matter. The work that we undertake in the intake, I'll refer to that, the intake rather than the headworks, will reduce the amount of sludge that ends up in all of the ponds over time. So there will be this compound benefit from the headworks actually reducing the amount of sludge. But we also considered the current level of sludge in the pond is sufficient that we don't have enough time to do the headworks project and get that benefit. In actual fact, we believed the sludge removal needed to occur first to buy us time to go and do the headworks design and program. And then we will get this ongoing benefit once the headworks is installed. And I just wanted to say that if you move one of these projects, I would recommend you move the other as well, because the two are really quite interrelated.
So,
yep.
If
I would rather not move.
No, sorry, my staff are just going to clarify what I said again. But anyhow, I just wanted council to remember that these two projects are interrelated.
Clarify in my head, if we did go ahead with sludge works sooner rather than later, then we will actually get more of a benefit when we do the intake upgrade by having done the sludge works
Correct.
as soon as possible. That's correct? So we will actually have more of a gain and more of a win and a gain going forward for our community
Yes.
in this space.
Yeah, the benefit is exponential then, because you get the improvement in the intake and then a better ability to treat in the oxidation pond. I would just like to comment on the organics waste facility. So we are in the process of getting the business case for a Wairarapa organic facility. However, it's going to be quite challenging to get everybody buying to get one in the Wairarapa. And even if we do desludge, there's going to be a dewatering process that's timely. So
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thanks. This is a good discussion. Thank you. I know we're inching glacially towards another entity, but you know, we spent 5 years preparing for a handover that didn't eventuate. In my mind, you can only knock the skittles over that are in front of you. And, you know, I think it's important. We know weather events are coming, but we don't budget for them because we can't. And we hope there'll be an entity somewhere in the future. But I really take on board Councillor Newman's point that agree. And in my mind, we shouldn't be continuing to improve our wastewater network for the benefit of an entity or even a council. The beneficiary are the ratepayers and the users of the service, and keeping that, our service, in the best possible condition going forward, regardless of who's sending the invoice, should be the priority. And I think Jeff mentioned earlier on about the, you know, our water, we're future-proof to 2040, and your wastewater network and in-house staff and all of this stuff is really, if we're going to talk about investment being good investment or bad investment, this is the best possible investment. I personally, I know it's money and all that, but I personally would not tinker with the engineering time frame for the work that's been proposed. And for my mind, I would support we follow the, you know, the work program and just accept that that's the budget that we have to accept along the way.
Thank you. Councillor Aileen, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is to the CE. Jeff, you can see how some of us around this table are desperately seeking to find a way to alleviate this rates figure. So desperate, in fact, we're looking at postponing core business around wastewater. I'm just wondering if you could advise council on where you would direct us to look to cut costs, because I'm feeling really hamstrung that there's nothing that we are able to touch right now. So where can we be looking to make cuts?
Asking a turkey to vote for Christmas.
Well, I'm trying to suggest things and not making progress. So
sorry, Councillor, can you repeat that again? There's too much chatter around the table.
So the question was to Jeff. I was saying you can see how desperate we are to try and look to reduce this rates burden. So desperate that we're looking at potentially cutting core costs or delaying core costs around this wastewater treatment. I'm asking, where would you advise us to look that we could cut costs in your mind that will have good bang for buck, but with the least amount of damage?
Yeah. So, look, that's definitely putting me on the spot. I think there's a couple of areas that we walked through in the previous part of deliberations where they are quite discretionary. And I know our economic development budget seems, you know, relatively small, but it is all discretionary. And we continue to make those investments. I think our fees and charges are another area where we can make improvements to our own. So it's not just about a cost conversation, it's about a revenue conversation with fees and charges. And sometimes those are hard for us to implement. We had George from the New Zealand Cycle Classic here, complaining about our costs for temporary traffic management. Now, if you'd like us to increase the costs for temporary traffic management, we could, and we'll end up with more people coming to council asking to be waived. But I think we need to look at the revenue side of the equation as well, Councillor Ayling. That certainly has a possibility. And then look, if we do wish to step back into levels of service, the big areas of our expenditure are roading and Three Waters. And that's probably where we're going to have the most impact, but it's often in capital. There's not a lot of operational expenditure that we can alter within the Three Waters. Most of it is, we're pumping, so that doesn't have a huge amount of variability to it. I do note some of the projects that are, so the solar panel project, has a long-term effect on electricity cost, and that's important. We could certainly, if we wish to, have a look at, our service delivery within our main office, but that will see customers in queues waiting. We're likely to end up with more negative responses in terms of our feedback towards new building construction occurring, planners. But those would probably be the areas that I'd look at first. Yeah.
Thank you. Did I answer your question? Thank you. Ron.
Yeah, question. Okay, so this is CapEx.
Talking about the CapEx, the motion that you have seconded is around the desludging, which is CapEx.
Yeah.
Order
if I was to change my mind on my motion. Yeah.
Well, you seconded the emotion.
No, I know it. I know it. So if I was to change my mind. This is CapEx C.
Yes.
And it's borne by all ratepayers or just residential?
The charges for wastewater are 90%, I believe it's 90% that are charged as targeted rate against those connected or able to connect to the wastewater service.
These costs and the impact of this will fall more on residential.
Urban.
Yeah. Be carried by the urban ratepayer.
Yeah. We only consulted on two matters. This was one of them, and we got a pretty clear indication that people thought it was
not sludge.
No, the sludge wasn't part of it. No.
But what you're saying is that they interconnect, and that if they were going to put back, it was the one that we consulted on. That didn't make much sense.
I guess what
I know where you're coming from.
I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
In hindsight, we might have consulted on more.
But we chose to consult on what we chose. So we're working with what
has happened.
We can't go back and rechange stuff and relitigate history or whatever else. We are deliberating on what we as a council decided. So Councillor Cretney, you have a motion on the table.
What's the motion again?
Can you please reread the motion that His Worship has seconded, and do you wish to keep it on the table? So first of all, do you want to reread it?
I think His Worship's pulled out of the motion.
So, Councillor Cretney, can you please?
Madam Chair, I have just another question, please, for Jeff, because this is related to the sludge. Trade waste charges, where is that used in council?
It goes towards the wastewater activity. To calculate the targeted rate, we take revenue, which is trade waste charges, expenditure, and the balance becomes the amount that is charged as the targeted rate. So it nets off the overall wastewater expenditure.
So is it used as OPEX and not put towards CapEx?
Correct. It is an OPEX charge. It's an invoiced revenue.
Yeah.
Last question. Otherwise we're just going to sit here.
That's useful.
It's very useful.
My question to, if I might, through Madam Chair, through to Johannes, How confident are you on those estimates? Because say, for example, getting rid of the sludge, we go ahead before the new waste, organic waste, I should be looking for, find it now, facility is built, we go ahead. So we've got to dispose of that ourselves, complete with all the contamination issues. How confident are you that, one, it will come within those estimates, you won't be coming back asking for more money, knowing that that will fall directly, as I've just had answered, back onto residential ratepayers if it blows out? Because we've not done this before, have we? And no one else has done it, as you've just said in the information.
So when me and the team worked on this, is we said, even though we know we need 1.5 to do everything at once, we're putting forward a budget similar to the Edwards budget that we're going to design to. So we're going to work to find a solution that fits within that budget. It might not address 100% of the sludge content. It might deal with 70% of it. But we will use the budget available to deal with as much sludge as we can. And that would include everything associated with that. It's likely that we would only be able to address a percentage of the sludge in one pond.
So we may not have got, okay, so that's helpful because it may well be, depending on how costs blow, that you're dealing with contaminated substances, that you won't do a full 100% desludge of a pond.
So
The longer you leave it.
Yeah.
So I just want to reiterate, I'm very aware that there's no movement on an unplanned expenditure over and above this budget. So we're going to come up with a solution within the what we've got to.
Yep. Councillor Cretney, would you like to read your motion?
Madam Chair, I think with the discussion around the table and the importance of having this project go ahead alongside the headworks, I think I'll rescind my motion.
Thank you. Okay. That's awesome. Absolutely.
So we missed out. Sorry, Madam Chair, we could have missed out on all that great.
And it's great. And I wasn't trying to rush it. I was just trying to get stuff clarified so we have outcome. So
Really not Emily.
So, sorry, Emily. So is everybody comfortable that we leave it as is in the LTP and we can move on to, I think there was another, or we're coming up 3:30 will be 2 hours. Do we want a quick 10-minute break now? Stretch our legs, get some fresh air because it's super stuffy.
What else have we got to go? What else?
Somebody else is admin overhead. Have we covered that off?
No, I think.
Or is that?
I think that's, yeah, because people want to talk about staffing levels and I've never really, I wanted to talk about OPEX general right across.
So,
it's about that issue that you sort of raised, and yeah, if you want to make, we're still looking to find work.
Yeah, I understand. I just want clarification for the table. So we're looking at, so it's not admin, it's.
This horrified look. Are we going to start corporate overhead allocation again?
No. It's just, yes,
sorry.
a different name.
Order. Dale, back in your box. Can we please clarify so we know what we're talking about and what we are going to be discussing? Can you just clarify in a really short sentence what you mean by overheads for when we come back after we have a 10-minute break?
OPEX.
So you want to discuss what?
Operation costs, right.
All OPEX.
Yeah, just that general, the level of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Whether or not we're comfortable of being where it is, whether or not we can find savings. And with the saving, I mean, the criteria would have to be is at the end of the day, it's the CE's got to find that, have that conversation.
Okay, so we'll have a conversation around OPEX. Grants, I think, didn't we not discuss that the other day? Which I'm pretty sure we did. So I think we will come back and we will have discussions, questions, potential decisions, who knows, around OPEX, and we will reconvene at 3:25. Thank you.